New York City-based Tectonic Theater Project created the Laramie Project to serve as a reminder of the murder of Wyoming College student Matthew Shepard, plus those left in the wake of the media frenzy that followed. The Laramie Project, 10 years later, an Epilogue, focuses on the same people and place a decade later. PreViews writer Jennifer Pencek speaks with Laramie Project co-writer Greg Pierotti about how Laramie has changed in the 10 years since the first play. He also talks about interviewing Aaron McKinney, one of 2 men convicted of the murder, and if McKinney or his accomplice Russell Henderson have shown remorse. In addition, he discusses his anticipation in seeing how audiences will react to the touring productions. The Laramie Project comes to Eisenhower Auditorium October 6, 2010. The Laramie Project, 10 years later, an Epilogue, is on stage the following evening.
How do you find Laramie 10 years later?
Well, it's an incredibly complex question, and that's absolutely what the epilogue treats. Laramie 10 years later treats that very question of how has the town changed and how do you measure change. There's all sorts of good things that have happened, and we talk about those in the play. Different characters talk about, Rob Dupree, who's the character in the first one, talks about the language that, he's experienced a major change in people's language, which is a huge, cultural change. People are more careful about the way they talk. In the sheriff's department, he won't put up with any kind of negative, what used to be very typical words like fag and things like that would come up in the police department. In the sheriff's department, it's just no longer tolerated. So those kinds of cultural changes have happened. A lot of gay people actually came out. Jonas Sloneker, who was kind of out when we went out the first time, is now completely out and lives openly with his partner in Laramie, and other people have that situation. Parents have become more supportive of their children. There's a symposium for social justice, which was renamed the Matthew Shepard Symposium for Social Justice, which has been really energized, and people, from all over the town come and listen to social justice speakers every year, and there's a bench memorial and a dedication, and a lot of people, just working hard to kind of see that Laramie continues to move forward. On the other hand, no legislation of any kind was ever passed in Laramie. Well, actually, there was one very small law about data collection, but no real substantial law was ever passed in Wyoming or Laramie to protect gay people. At the same time, I'm hesitant to make a strong judgment about that because, of course, it took 10 years of fighting on Judy Shepard's part for the Matthew Shepard Act to be passed at the federal level. It's been an uphill battle to get any kind of legislation that protects queer people from hate crimes, even though, ethnicity, gender, race, religion have been protected for many, many years. It's just that sexual orientation somehow isn't something that, that's when people start saying, oh, you're asking for special rights, but you're already giving special rights, if you want to call them special rights, which they're not. But, so those kinds of changes haven't happened. And then the really quite disturbing thing that we encountered when we went back to Laramie is that a lot of people are changing the narrative, People are really starting to talk about it as only a robbery. It did start as a robbery. The police are very clear about that. But now, it's many people prefer to just call it a robbery gone bad, or just call it a drug deal, or people want to slander Matthew's character and say, well, he was a druggie too, as if that makes any kind of difference. And that, certainly not the whole community, but many, many people in the community are really reconstructing that narrative. And then another disturbing issue that we found was that the younger generation doesn't know much about it, or many of the younger generation doesn't know much about it. It seems to me like at the university it should be part of their orientation. This is our history. This is something that happened here. And, we met students on campus who barely even knew who Matthew Shepard was. It's only been 10 years. So, that's pretty disturbing. And, to me, that kind of communal amnesia is it's homophobia. I mean, why is it more comfortable for a community to have a drug deal gone bad and in a vicious, and brutal killing than to have it be a hate crime? Well, I think maybe it's because people don't want to feel sympathy for queer people. So that was kind of the hardest thing for us, was to kind of encounter this. The fence also has been taken down, which is very disappointing, because that was really as we say in the first play, or Stephen B. Johnson says in the first play, that was a pilgrimage site for many gay people, and a very important physical place for many queer people. I mean, people would visit every year, and they took that down because they didn't want people going on their property, which, I guess is fair. It's your private property. But it's sort of a sad metaphor for what we sort of saw happening in the town, this disassembling of the facts of the story. So yeah, a lot of different kinds of changes, both good and disappointing, have happened in Laramie in the last 10 years.
You spoke with Matthew's killer, Aaron McKinney, and Tectonic member Stephen Belber spoke with Russell Henderson, who was Aaron's accomplice. Have they expressed any remorse about the killing?
I can't really speak for Russell. I mean, because I don't have direct experience with him. Stephen feels pretty strongly that Russell has some genuine remorse there, and that, he's really, he made a terrible mistake, and he, has remorse, and he's, going to be in prison for the rest of his life. Aaron, I can speak about, because I spent quite a bit of time with him. Unfortunately, the change with Aaron has been pretty negative. I'm very close with Father Roger, as I mentioned, and Father Roger actually spent a lot of time with Aaron in the year that he was incarcerated in Laramie. He was waiting for his death sentencing, the death penalty trial. And, during that time, pretty much he didn't have anyone else really attending to his spiritual condition at all, and he is a Catholic. And so Father Roger, who is the most genuinely Catholic man in the real sense of that word, he's just so inclusive, and he had just been so supportive of the gay community and of queer people in Laramie, and having the vigil for Matthew Shepard right away with no permission from the Catholic bureaucracy. And then he turned right around and started ministering to Aaron, and he spent a lot of time with Aaron, and is very confident that, that Aaron had a genuine experience of remorse, was able to really connect to his remorse. And Father Roger, was a prison chaplain. He's not a gullible guy, and he said, Greg, this man was able to understand to a certain degree what he did, and he's remorseful, But 10 years have gone by, and he's been in the prison system all that time, and he's really not able to articulate any experience of remorse at this point. In fact, he's pretty vehemently not remorseful. And, I find that incredibly disappointing. It's not even so much for anyone else, but for Aaron himself, for the condition of his, I don't know what you'd want to call it, soul, I guess. It's really a shame to me that he's so removed from that experience. But at the same time, it's a horrible environment, and you have to be hard. You have to be hard in prison to get by, and he is certainly doing his best to be as hard as he possibly can. It's pretty tragic.
What can Matthew still teach us, and what can people still learn from this?
That will be something that will be borne out over time, as the way that the Laramie Project was useful over time. I'm very, very excited about these productions and the tour that we're going on, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how people respond. And I do think that both the Laramie Project, which is probably a more, in a way, it's a more emotional play, and also a more uplifting play, and the Epilogue is a bit more of a kind of thought it's a provocative play and a pretty challenging play. But I think that the two of them together will really encourage people to think, there's no way that you can't be emotionally affected by the first play, and there's really no way that you can't have some of your thinking and your attitudes challenged by the second. And, so my hope is that at a grassroots level, as people start to encounter these plays, they'll really start to wonder, how homophobic they might be and whether, that's really the way they want to navigate life. I'm talking about liberal people too. I think we all make a lot of presumptions about how open we are. But I think, there's always more distance to go. So I think in that way, just kind of bringing the productions out into the world will manifest hopefully some personal change for some people. But I think that once the tour is done and, if and when we have a New York production and the plays get licensed to colleges and high schools, that's when really the Laramie Project started having the most profound effect, was when young people actually started encountering the texts and working with the story themselves. We have this gigantic community of all these young people all over the world who've done the Laramie Project and, feel that their lives have been personally changed. And so when the communities themselves are telling this story to each other, I think that's, hopefully when even more kind of positive grassroots cultural level change can and will, I hope, take place. So I can't wait to see how that plays out.
Tickets are on sale for both Laramie plays at Eisenhower Auditorium. Order online at www.cpa.psu.edu or by phone at 1-800-ARTS-TIX.